No, thank you so much, Thea, and thank you, Rachel. That was really fascinating and very thought-provoking. I have a lot to think about after that. But I'll jump right in. So what I'll just go through today is I'll briefly introduce you to my team, Historic Environment Scotland, and the kind of things that we do, before moving on to 3 examples of sort of the virtual and virtual reality ways that we use that in our work, both at Historic Environment Scotland and the National Trust for Scotland, who I work with, and then conclude with some challenges and thoughts that I have about digital heritage and its place going forward in the wider heritage sphere. So as mentioned, I work for Historic Environment Scotland. For those of you who don't know, it's a body that investigates and cares for Scotland's historic environment. I'm on the digital innovation and digital documentation team, which is a small team of people who have an umbrella project called the Ray Project, wherein we're working to digitally document all 336 of our properties in care, and all of the objects that they house. And this ranges from standing stones to castles and all of the artifacts that are associated with them, which is a huge undertaking. But what it gives us is this vast library of 3D snapshots in time to work with and then use to tell new stories about our past. This is a laser scan of Skara Brae you see on the screen. But as Rachel pointed out, it's not just having all of that heavy data in the background that's interesting. What's interesting is what you do with that data. So the first case study that I'll bring you to is how we can use the digital and the virtual to give access both off-site and on-site, which has been invaluable in the past year, as I'm sure everyone is aware. We are big fans of the site called Sketchfab, which is essentially YouTube for 3D models, used a lot by gamers and more in the heritage sphere, used to showcase everything from coins and pins to entire sites. This site, Edinburgh Castle, which is now available for annotated tours virtually around the space. You can jump into virtual reality right on the browser with Sketchfab. So it's a really powerful tool to kind of bring sites online and accessible to a wider audience. But also we've been able to use these on site during this time through simple, quick and dirty QR codes for folks moving around the castle and other sites that have been opened up slowly over this time to bring in invisible pieces of heritage into a more accessible way of visualizing it. For example, that Castle Forwell at Edinburgh Castle, which was scanned by lowering someone down into the well, which is a nightmare fuel, but got some incredible scans from it. And you're able to place that into the 3D model of the castle, and you can metaphorically plunge down into the depths. As well as a bigger library of virtual assets, including 360 photography, which gives you virtual access to sites which have been closed up during the pandemic as well. So really just trying to open to as many people as possible the places that have been forced to close down. And we're really focusing now on how we can take all these lessons that we were forced to learn over the past year and bring that into the future in a more sustainable and applicable way. The next case study that I'll turn our attention to is how the virtual can enhance reality, not only for interpretation, but for scientific investigation. This is the Hill House in Helensburgh, one of Charles May Mackintosh's work dating to the early 20th century, which has been suffering from damp ingress almost from its conception. And we at Historic Environment Scotland have been working with the National Trust, National Trust for Scotland, who look after this property, to create digital assets to help inform its conservation decisions and care moving forward, working in close collaboration with our conservation science team at the Engine Shed. So you can see here on the left a digital scan, a 3D scan of the Hill House's south elevation in 2019. And then moving across, we're able to use projected on archival images to give you a sense of how it would have looked in the 70s as well, and how the facade has changed, and then taking how it's been previously cared for and applying thermal imaging as well, to try to tell a really rich, complex story of how the Hill House has been cared for in the past, so that we can inform how it can be cared for in the future and map moisture movement throughout the house using digital technologies in a kind of virtual world, so that you can not only visualize it the way it looks now with color photography and mapping. This is the library, 3D model of the library. But also a more holistic view of how moisture can move throughout a space. You can see the dark blue damp of the chimney on the south elevation speaking directly to a dark blue patch in the corner of a room on the inside. And this virtual 3D view of how moisture moves throughout the house is being used by our conservation scientists and architects to inform how to care for the house moving forward. A really exciting project and an invaluable use of the virtual space. And finally, I'll wrap up with a proof of concept that we've been working on within our organization to promote collaborative working in virtual reality. This is something that I'm personally interested in, is how the virtual can often be associated with quite solitary experiences. You put on a headset and you're alone in this world, but really pushing how you can make the virtual a collaborative experience is something that's really fascinating. So this is a work in progress where we're working to be able to work with members of our team across the directorate, across the country, to be able to make quick and fast decisions and efficient conversations about how to care for our properties and care using 3D models and in the virtual space, no matter where you are in the country, which is very exciting. I'll close by talking about some of the challenges that I have personally with the virtual. And I think it's always important to remember that the issues with VR and reconstruction are similar to the issues that you have in the wider heritage and archaeological field, but can be amplified. And this ranges from everything from virtual reconstruction and the responsibility we have of articulating that this is a reconstruction and not necessarily the absolute truth that we're looking at. This is a beautiful reconstruction on the right you see of Bar Hill on the Antonine Wall. Really effective way of bringing a site to life and having people engage with the way the past may have looked and may have been. But as you can see on the left, in real life, it is what archaeologists lovingly call lumps and bumps. So while it's an incredible way of bringing that site to life, it's also important for us to remember how we have to mitigate what you're looking at may not be the exact way that it might have been, and how do you communicate that efficiently to visitors and colleagues alike. There are issues with accessibility. Just because something is online does not automatically make it accessible. There are issues that you need to address like tenfold when you're dealing with the virtual world. And finally, I'll end on the point that the longer that I work in digital heritage, the more that I find that the digital should never be the point. It should be used as a tool. The end user and the why should always be there from the very beginning of any project that you're starting to work on, and how we can use these tools of digital documentation, virtual reality, and applications to enhance experiences of heritage for visitors and our colleagues alike is something that all of us throughout the industry should be able to come together and discuss. Thank you. And if you have any questions about any of those projects, please do get in touch.